Okay, so this is not my final tier list. This is the list I made about a week ago after my first couple days with the game, and I still think it holds up, but I've since put a ton of time into Fiesta, and given the chance to use a more diverse weapon set, I've come around to some of the lower tier guns in particular. Halo Infinite, despite what the rubes will say about certain weapons, is extremely balanced, and every gun, yes, every single one, is viable in some way or another. Whether or not you use some of the utility weapons in particular is ultimately going to come down to how comfortable you are with each one of them, and that's part of the reason why I've changed my list. I think that with the right experience and good choices in real time, you can really win in Halo Infinite with every single weapon, and that's pretty cool. So this is my definitive Halo tier list. The general gist is the same. Use the BR. Everything else has a purpose. For scientific purposes, recognize that I play with a controller, and I could see the precision weapons like the Skewer being a little better on KBM, but I don't think it actually is going to change anything given the way this all shook out. So without further ado, S tier, battle rifle and rocket launcher. The BR is obviously the best gun in the game. It lands headshots easier than the Commando or the pistol and has a more optimal range than either. Notice I didn't say longer, because when feathered for single shots, the Commando functionally has the same range. But the BR is a cut above for the entire range up to maybe absolute max, so I go BR all day between those two. The rocket launcher is free kills. Doesn't lock onto vehicles like the older versions do, and it's slower, easier to avoid. Projectile in big team makes it not always a perfect option, but in mid-range, it's basically free kills with AoE damage, and it's the de facto Halo heavy weapon. Try not to blow yourself up, obviously, but be ready to go kamikaze as a last resort. A tier, the assault rifle. Strong at both short and mid-range with decent enough accuracy to pick up kills from long range, and it sits with the pistol as the most versatile weapon in the game, effective in all engagements when the shots land, and I find it particularly useful for getting cleanup shots where enemies are shielded down somewhere on the battlefield. It's just got enough range to pick off guys far away, and it's also effective at extremely close range if you can melee in time. The AR is just a really good blend of everything, and it's appropriate that it's one of the starting weapons. The Cinder Shot is a ricochet fire grenade launcher, probably my favorite gun to actually use in the whole game. The best strategy is to bounce it off of something and have an impact against the enemy, effective against vehicles, and can be deflected for extended range. Once it detonates, it actually creates a suction vacuum effect to draw in nearby enemies, so you'll get many kills from 2 shots instead of just one to draw them in, and then the second shot to close in for the kill. Every once in a while, the Cinder Shot will lose up close to a sword or a hammer, but with some range to keep your enemy at and time to use it effectively, it's extremely powerful. The pistol, be it not for the BR in the clear S tier, the pistol would very much be in the discussion for the best weapon in the game. It has reliable aim and decent range, and it can be spammed up close, and if you land every headshot, in terms of time to kill, it can beat out every other gun in the game. It probably has the highest skill ceiling of any weapon, and it is an effective counter to literally everything if you can land the shots and know what you're doing. You're never ever counted out if you have the pistol. The sniper rifle. I personally suck at sniping, but it's very clear to me that other people don't. The sniper rifle is effective and precise at range. No other weapon in the game can match it, and much like the rocket launcher, it's basically free kills when used optimally. I'm a big fan of no scoping as well, but be careful if you're like me and you have a tendency to whiff. If you see the white scope reflecting at you, duck. It's the sniper. The energy sword winds up being the best of the melee weapons because of the lunge and its near immediate response time, especially compared with the much slower windup of the hammer. It's probably one of the better guns in the entire game, especially the best melee weapon when paired with the grapple shot. So get used to sneaking up on people, getting behind them, and hitting them in the back. It's really effective. The Bulldog Shotgun. 2 shots up close kill, but often a 3-shot weapon. The Bulldog isn't the heavy weapon that shotty are in other Halo games, but it is auto fire and has a wider spread that makes it easier to land shots and pick up kills. It absolutely dominates at close range. A single shot at close range plus a melee kills, 2 shots at close range kills, and it actually has better range than you're probably expecting for a shotgun. Don't sleep on it. The Hydra. The Hydra is very much underrated in my opinion. You can swap between rapid straight fire rocket shots or lock on for tracking shots. Tracking is ideal at mid ranges, but the straight shot is more reliable up close and at max range where the lock on can engage. I think some people get the impression that it's weak because you can hit unshielded enemies with a rocket and not kill them, but at the end of the day, it's mostly effective against vehicles as a counter option, and it's pretty good against individual players as well. I definitely leave it in the A tier, and it's something I find myself dropping the primaries to pick up all the time. The Mangler. 1 shot plus a melee kills every time. Extremely valuable as a counter to the hammer, the Bulldog, or other close range weapons that hit hard. Comboed with the grapple hook in arena matches, the Mangler is borderline overpowered. I find myself swapping the pistol for it support on smaller maps and keeping the AR for the emergency cleanup afterwards. It's very effective, don't sleep on it. The Skewer. I actually hate this gun because I hardly ever seem to land shots with it, but everyone else is god tier with it apparently, so I guess I have to rank it highly. It's usually a one-shot kill on vehicles, but it depends on where the spike actually lands, so be sure to aim for the engine. And it's a straight shot at close to mid-range, but it does have drop-off arc at a distance, so it needs to be angled over for max distance targets. Extremely satisfying to get kills with and incredibly frustrating to die to. Be on the lookout for the red scope. It means you are about to get blasted. Commando. The Commando's erratic recoil and aim at range can make it a weaker alternative to the BR in most cases, though it can be feathered for more precise shots. It's pretty good for lining up that final headshot, and if you can get an enemy to quit strafing, it's pretty effective, but the erratic aim makes it sometimes difficult to line up at short range. B tier. Grav Hammer. The Grav Hammer can parry the sword, which actually makes it a viable dueling weapon if you know how to use it right. I don't think it's quite as effective as the energy sword at individual player kills due to the slow windup animation and no lunge, but it does massive damage to vehicles and has decent AoE effect for damage to multiple targets. Heat Wave. 3 shots to kill, or 1 shot plus a melee, occasionally 2 shots. Easy to line up vertical shots at mid and close range. The ricochet effect is great around corners, but can be unpredictable at times and will sometimes come back on you. I essentially only use it in vertical mode because damage is applied based on the number of individual shots that land, and against Spartans, there's just too much spread on the horizontal shot to be very effective, but the vertical lines up really nicely with enemy profiles. You gotta lead shots a little bit at range, but it's always satisfying to get a kill when you land the final shot and turn your opponent to cinders. The Shock Rifle. The Shock Rifle, like the Sniper, is a single headshot kill, which makes it extremely powerful. However, it requires 3 body shots to kill compared to only 2 for the Sniper, making it the definitively weaker option. However, it does chain lightning to other enemies for taking out shields, so it does have a specific utility, particularly in big team. It can also EMP vehicles, which makes it a devious counter to Hornets in particular. The Stalker Rifle. The Stalker Rifle is underrated. The fact that it often requires 2 shots on an unshielded enemy can give the illusion that it isn't powerful, but it is. When feathered and fired patiently, the Stalker Rifle can outlast the Commando and other rifles, particularly at mid to long range. The Sentinel Beam. Again, don't sleep on the Sentinel Beam. Its handling is a bit ornery, but it has the longest stretch of firing without needing a reload in the entire game, and it can out-finesse projectile weapons with some patient play. Additionally, it has excellent range, so even if it becomes increasingly hard to land at greater distances, it can still be effective. Lastly, and maybe I'm imagining this, but it sure feels like it's the most effective weapon in the game against vehicles. Oh, okay, maybe other than the Hydra or like, you know, a Grav Hammer up close, whatever. It melts vehicles at a good distance, making it a safer pick as a vehicle counter than trying to pick off pistol or AR clips at a range. I highly recommend it as a vehicle counter. The Needler. There's a very specific range where the Needler clicks and it's nearly an instant kill. Probably millisecond for millisecond, the quickest kill in the game outside of a perfection with a pistol or BR. However, that range is limited in its effectiveness. Too far and the Needler doesn't lock on, making shots nearly impossible to land, and up close it also whiffs, leaving the player vulnerable. It's also a bit of a feast or famine weapon, and I find it a better option on middle-sized maps like Behemoth compared to the strictly bigger or smaller maps. Utility weapons. The Disruptor. The Disruptor is, in my opinion, the most underrated gun in the whole game, though due to its low damage output, it's probably high B tier at best, only requiring 3 shots to break an enemy shield, and then it will keep the shield down as each dart continues to pulse for damage over time. If you land 5 or 6 body shots, you can walk away and the damage will continue to finish off your enemy a few seconds later. The EMP effect also chains to other enemies for shield takedowns at only 3 shots landed. My strategy is most often to try and land those 3 shots and then swapping to an AR or a pistol for a killing blow, but I do pop off headshots occasionally. The damage over time extends the duration of down shields, making it easier to patiently and safely finish off 1v1 encounters, as you can wait for your shield to recharge, but your enemy can't. It can also be stacked for EMPs on vehicles. The Plasma Carbine is another highly divisive pick, and I find its greatest utility is purely in shield takedown at mid-range. Much like the Plasma Pistol, the tracking shots at mid-range are extremely effective if you can land them. Landing 3 shots and then swapping to a pistol or AR to clean up, or finishing with a melee is once again the move. That being said, it's not my favorite weapon to use because adept strafers can effectively dodge the shots if they are heads up about it, and it's probably the weapon I find myself most consistently dropping in Fiesta for almost anything else. The Ravager. The Ravager to me feels like the primary shot is underpowered, and while it appears to have wide splash damage, it's not as effective at AoE as it appears. However, the secondary fire, which literally lights a small area on fire, is extremely effective in objective game types and good for defending a flag or a zone. The Plasma Pistol. What did they do to you, man? Probably the worst gun in the game. The charge shot has very good tracking and does take out enemy shields, combo up with other weapons, but it's extremely difficult to kill with, and the charge shot no longer EMPs vehicles like in past Halo games, reducing its utility. It's probably the gun I swap out the absolute most in Fiesta matches. And that's it. That's everything. I might rank the equipment in another tier list, but in terms of weapons, I think this is it, and it will stay this way unless other guns are introduced, which apparently is on the table. So hope you guys enjoy.